زكاتك تدفع عنك البلاء وتحفظ مالك أن أقام.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to part 11 of the short series on contemporary laws related to zakat. Today we will be discussing the different zakat rates and what they are applicable on and how we can calculate our zakat using the appropriate rate. Now, contrary to popular belief, 2.5% isn't the only rate that is applicable for zakat. 2.5% is restricted to certain types of assets. But before we get to understanding what rates to use, zakat is applicable annually on a lunar year. This is very important, on a lunar year for all commercial zakatable assets and livestock. So important to remember that it's the lunar year, which is not the same as the solar calendar that we are usually accustomed to. So in your personal capacity, it's always best if you are working on an annual zakat date, it should be based on the Islamic date or the Hijri date, for example, the 1st of Ramadan. Now, when is the correct date that you should be choosing or that should be used for zakat? It's that date when you became eligible for zakat. So when was that date? If you look back to the earlier videos, when you possessed the minimum amount of wealth known as the nisab over your personal assets, and 1 year passed over that wealth. So for example, if you came into the possession for the very first time on the 1st of Sha'ban in a particular year of the nisab, a year will pass from 1444 to 1445. And when you get to the 1st of Sha'ban of the next year, now a full year has passed over this wealth. That is now your annual zakat date. It's applicable at a rate of 2.5% on gold, silver, currency, and articles of trade. So most of the aspects that we've discussed in this series on zakat, your rate that you would use would be 2.5%. If, however, you are using a solar year, so sometimes for businesses and companies that prepare financial statements on an annual basis, they prepare them, for example, at the end of December or the end of February or the end of the tax year, they don't have all of the values accurately on a Hijri date, for example. So the IOFI standards, which are global standards that are used for Sharia financial institutions, has advised that when you use the solar year for your cash and commercial assets, then the rate is going to be different. It's going to be a rate of 2.577%. And the reason for this is that it accounts for the difference in days between the solar calendar and the lunar calendar. And I've included a small formula here for those that are interested in understanding how we move from 2.5% up to 2.577%. It accounts for that 11-day difference from the lunar year into the solar year. Then there's specific rates for agricultural produce. Now, whilst we haven't included zakat on agricultural produce and what types of produce are included, we're finding that agriculture is becoming an important investment asset class, particularly in South Africa. So it's important for you to go out and understand and consult with the ulama to understand how you would calculate zakat. But in a nutshell, typically the value would be 10% of produce of non-irrigated lands, 5% for the produce of irrigated lands, and if it's in between partially irrigated lands, then it would be 7.5%. Now, it's also not based on an annual basis. Consideration to a year is not given for agricultural products. It's based on the harvest. So when the harvest happens, then this amount is due. If you're invested in livestock, then livestock has zakat that is based on predetermined zakat tables. And again, I would encourage you to go and consult with the ulama to understand what the implications would be if you are invested in livestock. So in this session, we looked at the lunar year and the importance of calculating your zakat on the lunar year. We also looked at the rate that is applicable which is 2.5% on gold, silver, cash, and articles of trade. We looked at what would happen if you had to use a solar calendar as a benchmark and how you adjust the rate to ensure that your zakat is accurate. And then we just touched on zakat on agricultural produce and livestock. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
لذلك قال الرسول الكريم فلد بالنداء تفز بالمرام.